Welcome to this Mindful Mondays. We're on to the last topic of mindfulness, which is mindfulness of Dhammas, mindfulness of truth. So introducing mindfulness of Dhammas is the Dhammas really is the teaching of the Buddha, and it's the truth as the Buddha saw it. So we're going to look at what is Dharma and what the teaching is composed of, and why to be mindful of the Dharma teachings, and then do a meditation practice on the Dhammas. So, as we know, the mind is individual. Okay, so my mind is very different to your mind. It's subjective experiencing of something that is already changing moment to moment. So it's always changing moment to moment. So all of our experience is subjective, which is how we interpret the world, external events. So hence, why not to understand the mind? Because when you understand the mind, you understand everything. That is one of the truths. So what is Dharma? Heard the name Dharma. What does it actually mean? It's a concept generally known as the Buddhist teachings. So the teaching of the Buddha. So when there's millions of Buddhists around the world, and following the Buddhist teaching, and it gives people meaning and understanding within their lives. And it's not just monks in a monastery. There are many Buddhists that are living layman's lives as well. And there's also many couples that have got enlightened. So this within the Buddha's lifetime. So the Dharma, as taught by the Buddha, is about overcoming dissatisfaction or suffering, which the Buddhists call dukkha. The Dharma is referred to by the Buddhist doctrine and is often interpreted to mean the teachings of the Buddha. So it encapsulates, basically just summarize it as this: clinging leads to suffering. The Dharma is about understanding clinging, so there's no more suffering. And there is a way, and there's an eightfold path to do that. And that's what it is. Okay? So the Buddhist teachings themselves move along a graduated path. So the first stages are about calm abiding, so about just sitting, meditating, just being. And then there's stages of deep insight. So the insight meditation comes. So you start to find out about your inner world, what's more going on. All the qualities that the great masters have found, we can attain as well. Buddha was a human being. We're human beings. It's possible for us all to get enlightened. So let's not make this complicated. It's about doing the work and removing the obstacles in the path to follow the path. But it all depends on our own efforts, our diligence, our deeper knowing, and our correct motivation as to why we want to do it. So it comes back to our intention, why we're doing what we're doing. So what is Dharma? It's kind of the truth about the universe, as Buddha discovered. It's based on the actions and teachings of the Buddha. It means to uphold and be central to the Buddhist belief. It means it forms the universe. It's how we experience the world, and it does lead you into the fact that we can overcome suffering and dissatisfaction. So a lot of people kind of view Buddhism as a pessimistic sort of way of life, but it's really a realistic view of life. So it's not optimistic or pessimistic, but it's realistic. It's in the middle. It's seeing things as they are, and that's what we're going to go through within this section of the mindfulness course. So what was the teaching composed of? We're just going to look at that. So what Buddha, first of all, he introduced the Four Noble Truths. And the Four Noble Truths was his first sermon that the Buddha gave, and it underpins everything. So with all the teachings, you can find the Four Noble Truths in it. So it all integrates in it. The first Noble Truth was that anguish is everywhere. Okay, so life is full of suffering and discontentment. This is the greatest truth there is. And if you've read Scott Peck's book On the Path Less Travelled, then he starts, his opening line in that book is life is difficult. And if we get present to that, and we understand it, that life is difficult, life is full of suffering, life is full of problems, then we can accept it. And then we can truly start living. It's when we don't accept it that we want things to be different and we don't accept things the way they are, that creates the suffering and discontentment. We, in our minds, are saying not good enough, not good enough, not good enough on every little thing. What we say, what we eat, what we do, what other people do, everything. And that all causes a suffering. That's number one. Number two is that we desire permanent existence for ourselves and for our loved ones, and we desire to prove ourselves independent of others and superior to them. These desires conflict with the way that things are. Nothing abides, and everything and everyone depends on everything and everyone else. We are all connected, but we see ourselves as separate. We have different identities. You can just go out onto the street and sit in a coffee shop and just watch people. Each one has their own identity and they view themselves as separate. This causes conflict. It causes our anguish, and we project this anguish onto those that we meet. This is the cause, the root cause of suffering and contentment. So the third noble truth is that it's possible to release from this anguish, and it comes with the personal acknowledgement and resolve. We are here together very briefly, so let us accept reality fully and take care of one another while we can. So the third noble truth is about cessation of suffering and discontentment. It's basically Buddha's teaching of saying there is a way out. And then the fourth teaching is sharing that way out. And this is the acknowledgement and resolve which are realized by the eightfold path. Right views, which is right understanding, right thinking, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right recollection, and right meditation, right mindfulness, right concentration. So here the word right means correct. It's not right or wrong, it's absolute. It's accurate. So it's in keeping with the reality of impermanence and interdependence. So what we're going to cover on mindfulness of Dhammas in the teaching is we're going to explain the 5 hindrances again, and then we're going to explain the 5 aggregates again, so you can really get present to that. And then we're going to understand the 6 senses again, and we're going to look at mindfulness of factors of awakening, because how do we know that we've got there if we don't know what it is? And we're going to understand the 4 noble truths. And we're going to understand mindfulness of death as well. So we're going to look at that. When faced with all the ups and downs of life, still the mind remains unshaken, not lamenting, not generating defilements, always feeling secure. This is the greatest happiness, said the Buddha. So why should we be mindful of the Dharma teachings? Well, they've survived for many years, but the real reason is that it works. And Buddha is not saying, believe me, believe me, believe me. He's saying, this is what I've found. Test it out for yourself. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, don't. So he leaves it for you to actually take it on. It's not forced upon anybody. It's basically his kindness and generosity of sharing what he found out to save the trouble. So we're in a very, very opportune time to really get this. And it hasn't just come overnight. We're talking, this is years old, this teaching. What gets in the way is our society and our ego and the world that we live in, the world of consumerism, which promotes the me, me, me. And then we can't see clearly because we still think that we're separate and not connected. So let's get present to what the samsara, which is like the circle of life, it's will, Dharma wheel of life. Samsara is not out there, but rather in the way that we experience our environment. To target it precisely, samsara is in the quality of our minds. Our minds are not functioning in accordance with reality, and therein lies the problem. So our minds are a bit delusional. The mind has no mind. It will create what it wants to create. And unless we become aware of it and we grab that monkey mind, then it continues to just believe its own story. So what the Buddha taught is that mind states can actually lead us into suffering, and unwholesome mind states leads us to unskillful actions. So if we have a mind state of greed, it's going to lead us to eating more, and then it's an unskillful action because our body gets more than it needs, and then you develop fat and you become unhealthy. That's just one example. He also taught that there's no fixed, unchanging self. It is not that we don't exist. It's just that it changes. Our body's changing, our mind's changing, our thoughts are changing, our emotions are changing, our perceptions are changing. Everything is constantly changing. And the body keeps the score because through the mind-body connection. We create the world we live in. So what world do you want to create? Now, just to sort of explain a bit of the refrain. So the refrain and the Buddha went through this period of renunciation. He went through a lot of asceticism, where he was starving himself, and he realized that that wasn't the way. Eventually, he realized there's a middle way. So the insight bit is where you can develop the wisdom. Mindfulness depends on a concentrated mind. So you do need to have that one-pointedness of mind. And you start to become aware of the rising and the falling. The rising of emotions and the falling of emotions. The rising of breath and the falling of breath. Liberated or unliberated states of mind, you start to get present to the different states of mind in each moment. You don't cling to ideas, feelings, or mind states. You understand no fixed, unchanging self, because everything's constantly changing and nothing is permanent. Nothing is permanent except change. Really get present to that. Let's do a meditation practice on the mind. So getting into a comfortable position for this meditation, either sitting on the floor or on the chair with your legs uncrossed, keeping the back nice and upright, and just half closing the eyes, placing one hand on top of the other, just resting your hands on your thighs. Taking a nice deep breath in, and as you breathe out, relaxing your shoulders. On the next inhale, scanning the body from the head all the way down to the toes. Now checking in with the mind, and just note what's there. Putting any worries or concerns aside, like taking your shoes off before entering a building, just putting them aside while we set our intention for this meditation practice to get present to mindfulness of truth, the Dhamma, the Buddha's teaching. Getting present to the Four Noble Truths, the first discourse of the Buddha. The first Noble Truth being life is full of suffering or discontent, anguish, whatever you want to call it. It's one of the greatest truths that life is difficult. When you get present to that truth and you accept it, it no longer becomes difficult. And you're not the only one that suffers. Everyone else suffers as well around you. So it's really getting present to that first noble truth of suffering that can start you off on the journey. The second noble truth is getting present to the causes of suffering, which is this thirst or desire for sense objects, it's this desire for becoming somebody in the world that we interact with, rather than becoming nobody. The third noble truth is the fact that there is a way out. There's a sensation of suffering, and it's possible for every one of you to become enlightened. Says the Buddha is a human being, just like you and myself. So the fourth noble truth is the framework for getting out. That's the Eightfold Path. So as to summarize, the truth from the Buddha is that when we cling to anything or anyone, we suffer. So it's about non-clinging, reducing the attachments, ignorance, and increasing the wisdom so you can see clearly, see things as they are, as they truly are. Right here, right now. The next inhale, just scan the body from the head all the way down to the toes. Now just check in with the mind and just note what's there. What mind state are you in? Is it different to when you started? Just note what it is and then get present to the felt experience, that mind state. And then perhaps investigate where it's come from.
and then just letting go. Getting ready to open your eyes and come back into the room.
Practice on the mind. So noting what your experiences have been, it's always good for reflection. So just get present to this. One moment can change a day. One day can change a life. And one life can change the world. Buddha did it. He changed the world by sharing his teachings. You can change the world too. Do the work. Any questions, please get in touch. But here's the invitation to do the work, because being on the path is about doing the work. So review the teachings of the Dharma, watch a Dharma talk on mindfulness of Dhammas, and get present to impermanence and why it is important to understand it for your meditation practice. Here's some list of resources, so you can look at the 4 foundations of mindfulness as a whole. You can understand the 4 Noble Truths, and you can look at a Dharma talk on Dhammas. So the next topic, we're going to go over the 5 hindrances again in more detail, because it's an essential part of the teaching of mindfulness of Dhammas.